Josh Kelly, welterweight, currently 6-0, fighting for the Commonwealth title. Follow sport icons.
Okay, so one of the talking points right now, ever since Conor Benn stopped Chris Van Heerden in 2 rounds in Manchester last night, is who is it that Conor Benn should be fighting next. Now, we have to look at this from not just the UK perspective, we have to try and look at it from a global perspective as far as DAZN are concerned. They are putting a lot of pressure on Eddie Hearn right now. Eddie Hearn, he's had that period of overspending for fighters and all that kind of stuff. Now it's time to start delivering the numbers. I don't know what kind of numbers that they're delivering. I'm led to believe not great numbers. So they will be looking at someone like a Conor Benn to hopefully make him into the superstar that Eddie Hearn says that Conor Benn is. Now, we all know, and Eddie Hearn knows, Conor Benn is not a global superstar. He's not. But potentially, maybe he could be. And that depends on his next couple of fights, in my honest opinion. And I think, from my perspective, I'd like to see Conor Benn fight for the world title in the next 3 fights. So he needs to fight somebody with a good brand name right now, but also a test. Then he needs to be fighting, say, one of the other tough prospects, like a Virgil Ortiz Jr. or a Boots Ennis, for example. Then fight for the world title. I think that's probably the ideal progression for Conor Benn. So who is it that Conor Benn should be fighting next? Again, we have to look at it from a global perspective, not just UK, all right? And we could pull out the name of, say, Amir Khan. Should Conor Benn fight Amir Khan next? In the UK, people would tune in to watch it. People would buy tickets to the arena. But as much as Amir Khan is a global superstar name, people know he's past it now. He's shot. So we kind of know what the result's going to be. As soon as Conor Benn lands on Amir Khan, it's done. So would the global audience tune in for that fight? It'll probably do quite well, but that's not the kind of fight that would make Conor Benn the superstar that Eddie Hearn and DAZN want him to be, because people expect Conor Benn to defeat Amir Khan, if that makes sense. We could look at, say, Kell Brook. Kell Brook, of course, is coming off of a win over Amir Khan. That has boosted his profile. That was a high-profile fight with Kell Brook and Amir Khan. But Kell Brook, he does have a big name here in the UK. It will do very well at the gate. And it will do very well for subscribers on DAZN here in the UK. How well would it do in America? Now, Kell Brook is a decent name outside the UK. He is. Especially with America, where, of course, they've seen him win the IBF welterweight world title against Sean Porter. They also know him because he lost that same belt to Errol Spence Jr. and, of course, not so long ago, lost to Terence Crawford. So people know the name of Kell Brook. But Kell Brook, of course, is apparently asking for 10 million. And that's the kind of fight that DAZN would end up paying if they paid Kell Brook the 10 million, plus pay Conor Benn a whole chunk of change in that as well. Probably won't get a great return on the global audience. So I don't think that's probably going to be the fight next, unless, of course, Kell Brook drops his demands to, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 million, I would imagine. But we could look at, say, David Avanesian. David Avanesian is a fighter that him versus Conor Benn is a big fight here in the UK. It shouldn't be a big fight, but his name gets thrown around a lot when it comes to Conor Benn to Eddie Hearn, because once upon a time, Conor Benn versus Josh Kelly was the fight here in the UK people would love to have seen. So because David Avanesian defeated Josh Kelly, people will go to Conor Benn, well, what about fighting the guy who defeated your rival in Josh Kelly, David Avanesyan? That name has been perpetuated quite a lot. So here in the UK, it's become a bigger fight than probably what it should be. It would do quite well at the gate, and it would do quite well as far as the subscribers and viewership here in the UK on DAZN. It would. But that's not going to make him the global superstar. That's not going to boost Conor Benn's profile. So if he defeats David Avanesyan, I don't know quite what kind of credit he's going to get for that. So I don't think David Avanesyan should be the name. But again, maybe Conor Benn versus David Avanesyan, the fight after, right before he fights for a world title. If it's not going to be Virgil Ortiz Jr. or Boots Ennis, maybe a David Avanesyan after, or a Stanionis, for example. When Conor Benn has already had that name where Americans will look at Conor Benn and go, okay, now when you start following his career, we could we could be watching something quite special here. Okay, so maybe David Avanesian after this next fight. Now, we could look at other names that have been mentioned, like Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia, unfortunately for him, his profile would have taken a bit of a kicking when he lost to Sandor Martin. Now, for those of you who are hardcore boxing fans, know losing to Sandor Martin is no shame. But from the global perspective, it will be. People don't know Sandor Martin. People will look at Mikey Garcia and go, you're shot. You're not the same fighter that you once was. Ever since you lost to Errol Spence Jr., you haven't been the same fighter. Now, don't get me wrong, he looked quite good against Jesse Vargas, but that's Jesse Vargas, no disrespect to him. But it didn't look good against Errol Spence Jr. Didn't look good against Sandor Martin. People will look at him and go, you're not really a welterweight, are you? Now, we know he's too old now to be a super lightweight, if you like. But he's not strong enough to be a welterweight. He's in that no man's land. So I don't think Conor Benn would get the kind of credit that he probably should get by fighting and maybe defeating Mikey Garcia. As far as the audience is concerned, as I said, I think him losing to Sandor Martin would have hurt that profile. But he's going to demand a lot of money. So will Conor Benn. And DAZN may not get their return back. Honestly, I think for that kind of fight to happen, I think Mikey Garcia needs to fight somebody and get a win. Then maybe look at that fight. Coming off a loss, no, I don't think that's the right name. I really don't. That's far too much money for not much return, in my honest opinion. Listen, I'm not a businessman, okay? So maybe I'm wrong on that one, okay? But you can mention another name like Adrien Broner. Again, he does bring a huge profile. He does. People in the UK know Adrien Broner. People in America certainly know Adrien Broner. Is that the kind of name that would make Conor Benn a crossover? Maybe in some ways, but arguably not. I think most people who really know Adrien Broner and watch how he fights nowadays realise he's not the same fighter he once was. People question his motivation for boxing. People question his mentality because he does a lot of crazy crap outside the ring. But over his last few fights, look at Adrien Broner. He throws 3 or 4 punches per round and then claims at the end that he was robbed. So we know what to expect of Adrien Broner. Adrien Broner versus Conor Benn would do well at the gate. It would do well as far as viewership in the UK and America is concerned on DAZN. But that's not going to make Conor Benn a superstar because it's going to be a crap fight. Conor Benn is going to be chasing him around. Broner is going to be trying to be Floyd Mayweather, even though he's never going to be, leaning on the rope, shoulder rolling, throwing 1 or 2 punches back, and then claiming he got robbed. It's going to be a boring fight. That was not going to make Conor Benn a superstar. He's not going to make Conor Benn must-see because he just come through a boring fight. It's going to be like watching the Adrian Granados fight almost. Not quite as bad as that, but it won't be too far off it. So I don't think Adrien Broner is the right kind of fight. Again, that's a lot of money that they're going to have to pay out for probably not too much return in the long term. So who is it that Conor Benn should fight? I think that Conor Benn should probably fight someone, either a Keith Thurman or a Danny Garcia. One of those two. Because they bring big name. And there's no guarantees that Conor Benn is going to lose that fight or win that fight against either Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia. I think you probably make Conor Benn the favourite, but not by much. And of course, both of them carry big US brand name, especially with Danny Garcia with his Latino fan base. Danny Garcia, of course, he's well known here in the UK because obviously he defeated a global superstar and a big UK superstar in Amir Hearn quite some years ago. So people already know Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia, of course, has been in there with Errol Spence Jr., with Sean Porter. And of course, hey, listen, Danny Garcia, yes, he doesn't quite pull it off at the top end. He doesn't. You know, him losing to, say, Keith Thurman, for example, which is the other name I'm talking about. Listen, that weren't a bad fight, but Danny Garcia, again, I mean, are his days as a welterweight numbered? Is he too lazy outside of camp? I don't know. But if he can make the welterweight limit, and that is the kind of fight that Conor Benn takes next, that would have a lot of interest here in the UK and a lot of interest in America. He brings big numbers. And he probably wouldn't ask for a stupid amount of money. He's going to ask for a lot of money, and rightfully so, because he does bring that brand. But I think Danny Garcia is the right kind of fight, because Danny Garcia brings the name and he brings the experience as well. And if Conor Benn can look very, very good against Danny Garcia, that is going to boost his profile. It's really going to boost his profile against Danny Garcia. Keith Thurman, very, very similar. Keith Thurman, I mean, he's only got one loss on his resume, and that was to Manny Pacquiao. But again, Keith Thurman, one of his things that does hurt him is his inactivity. But we know how good Keith Thurman is. Keith Thurman is a big name in America. The American audience will tune into DAZN to watch Keith Thurman, much like they will with Danny Garcia. Win, lose or draw, people tune in. Whether they like him or whether they don't, they will tune in to watch him. And Conor Benn, if he was to defeat a Keith Thurman, is fantastic on his resume. That's a fantastic win. Much like Danny Garcia is a fantastic win. So if you can get past one of these two gentlemen, Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia, then you look at a Boots Ennis, then you look at a Virgil Ortiz Jr. or a David Avanesyan or a Stanionis, and then move into a world title fight. But there's no guarantees that Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia is going to lose to Conor Benn. No guarantees. Both of these are very experienced fighters. They've been around the block a little bit. Okay, Keith Thurman, very inactive. Inactivity does cost Keith Thurman, I feel. But in my opinion, those two should be the names that they're looking at. One of those two will get interest in the UK and America. Outside of America, how well would it do in Japan? How well would it do in Germany or Italy or Spain? I don't know. But I think it would do quite well. I really do. In my opinion, Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia should be the name that Conor Benn should be fighting next. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.